Hello and welcome. We often think of angels as loyal messengers of heaven, strong, pure, and obedient to God. But the Bible and many ancient texts reveal something very different. There were once 200 angels. They were sent down to earth to watch over mankind. They were not enemies. They were guardians. But in one fateful moment, they made a vow together, a vow that shook the heavens and opened the door to a disaster the world had never seen. It didn't begin with war. There was no thunder, no gate of heaven slamming shut. It began with a secret covenant, right on top of Mount Hermon, a covenant unknown to humanity. But its consequences still cover the world today. Have you ever heard the name Semyaza? He was the leader of the Watchers. Or Azazel, the one who taught humans how to forge weapons and craft forbidden spells. They were not alone. They were part of a host of 200 angels, angels who betrayed their creator with full agreement. Imagine this, 200 powerful beings who once stood before the throne of God chose to abandon all of heaven's glory for the desires of human flesh. Why? Were they lacking in glory? Were they not satisfied with heaven? Or was there something in mankind so tempting they were willing to trade away eternal life? This rebellion was not just a fall. It was a union between the holy and the unholy, between heaven and flesh. And it twisted the very order of the universe. Many think their fall was just a one-time mistake, but it wasn't. It was planned. It had a leader. It had a vow. And its effects still echo today, because their children are still here. Now we begin the journey. Who were these fallen angels? Why did they choose Mount Hermon? And why has humanity never truly escaped the legacy they left behind? Let's step into the shadows of a story rarely mentioned in the official scriptures, a story that is hard to accept. But if you dare to face it, you will realize we're not just talking about the past. We're stepping into a war that has never ended. And now, we begin part 1, the covenant on Mount Hermon, the vow against heaven. If you've ever stood before a towering mountain range, you'll understand why such places are often chosen for sacred, life-changing events. In the Bible, mountains are where people meet God, like Moses on Mount Sinai, like Jesus transfigured on a high mountain. But Mount Hermon was the exception, because it was not where man met God. It was where angels decided to rebel against him. According to the book of Enoch, a sacred ancient text respected by early Jewish and Christian communities, 200 angels were sent down to earth to watch over humanity. They were called the Watchers, but when they drew near to mankind, they didn't just observe. They began to desire, not power, not glory. They already had all that in heaven. What they longed for was the daughters of men. Semyaza, the leader of the Watchers, knew this was a sin beyond forgiveness. He knew that if they crossed the line, they would face eternal judgment, no way back. So he made a proposal. I fear you will not go through with this, and I alone will suffer a great punishment. But instead of pulling back, the other 199 angels replied with one voice, "Let us all swear an oath and bind ourselves together so that none of us will turn away." Let us do this together. They chose Mount Hermon as the place of their covenant, and there a strange ritual took place. There was no light from heaven, no sound of trumpets, only a vow of betrayal, made in darkness, desire, and the free will they were willing to trade. We often think rebellion is impulsive, but what happened on Hermon was not impulsive. It was planned, deliberate, organized, and completely united. 200 angels, beings who once stood in the full glory of heaven, chose to leave it all behind, not because they were cast out, but because they chose to fall. And did you notice something? In all the spiritual history ever recorded, no rebellion ever began with a united oath, except this one. Even Satan fell alone. But the Watchers, they formed an alliance. That makes us wonder, is the most terrifying thing not the fall of one being, but when heavenly powers join together to do what they know will bring destruction? Where God created the heavens and the earth in perfect order, they swore to tear it apart together. Hermon, once a meeting point between heaven and earth, became the border between glory and doom. And from that moment on, they were no longer watchers. They became those who spread forbidden knowledge and opened a door mankind could never close again. But their rebellion didn't end with a vow. What they brought down to earth next was even more dangerous. Part 2, what they taught humanity. When the Watchers chose to leave heaven and live among humans, they didn't just lust after women. They brought something else with them, something far more dangerous. Knowledge, but not the kind of knowledge that frees the soul. It was knowledge that unlocked power far beyond human limits. Power without the fear of God. According to the book of Enoch, each angel taught a different subject, and every subject, though it seemed useful, led to corruption. Ezael, the most prominent among them, is said to have taught humanity how to forge weapons, swords, knives, and armor, how to make jewelry to seduce, to enhance beauty, how to use cosmetics to color eyelashes and cheeks. At first glance, these things might seem harmless, but think again. When humanity had never known war, teaching them to forge weapons was planting the seed of bloodshed. And when women had never used artificial beauty, teaching them how to enchant through adornment was igniting the fire of lust. And Azazel wasn't the only one. Other angels taught sorcery, spells, and the summoning of spirits, astrology, reading stars to predict destiny, the use of herbs, not for healing, but for abortion and mind control. What we're seeing here is a curriculum of darkness, a school founded by fallen angels, where the price of admission was the purity of the human soul. Have you ever wondered, why did evil spread so quickly after the Watchers arrived? Why did mankind go from simplicity to violence, lust, and murder in just a few generations? The answer isn't evolution, it's invasion by knowledge that never belonged to us. They handed us tools far beyond our ability to control. And when knowledge is given without faith or fear of God, it becomes a weapon of self-destruction. From that moment on, humanity began to build empires, worship beauty, craft tools of death, and interact with the spiritual realm in ways never intended by the Creator. It was like giving a loaded gun to a 5-year-old child. What was first seen as power quickly became the trap that led to collapse. Look at the world today. Cosmetic surgery, weapons of mass destruction, witchcraft disguised as universal energy, the law of attraction, or inner awakening. All of it is the legacy of the first lessons the Watchers gave to humanity. And the terrifying part? Many today still hunger for that same knowledge, without ever realizing it came from the oath made on Mount Hermon. This is not the knowledge that leads to life. It's a counterfeit wisdom, one that makes mankind believe they are gods. And that very teaching opened the door to the birth of the Nephilim, the first generation born of divine rebellion and human flesh, and the beginning of our destruction. What was born from their union was something the world was never meant to carry. Part 3, the Nephilim, children of sin and illicit power. After the covenant on Mount Hermon, after the Watchers began to live among humans, the chaos didn't end with forbidden knowledge. The most terrifying part was their offspring. The Bible, in Genesis chapter 6, records this moment. When the sons of God saw that the daughters of men were beautiful, they took them as wives, as they chose. And from them came the mighty men of old, men of renown. These were the Nephilim. At first it sounds vague, but if we understand the context, this is not just a story about giants. It's a warning about a hybrid race, born from the rebellion of angels and the weakness of mankind. The Nephilim were the result of the Watchers mating with human women, but they were not like humans, and they were not like angels. They were something in between, yet cut off from both. Why? Because they were not created by God. They were born from lust and blasphemy. The book of Enoch describes them as giants, many times taller than normal men, savage, drinking blood, eating flesh, killing both man and beast. Soulless, their spirits didn't come from heaven, but from unnatural fusion. And here's the most haunting part. When their hunger outgrew all bounds, they began to devour humans. The Nephilim were not just legendary warriors. They were beings who shattered the divine order of creation. They defiled the earth itself. Imagine it. A world where mankind no longer controls its own fate. A world where angelic power is mixed with carnal nature. A world where every line between light and dark, truth and falsehood, holy and profane, has been erased. The Nephilim were the living face of that chaos, and that is why God had to destroy the entire world in the days of Noah, not just because of moral corruption, but because the very structure of humanity had been altered. The sacred image of God in man was being erased. All flesh had corrupted its way on the earth. Genesis chapter 6. But the most terrifying part is that the death of their bodies did not mean the end of their spirits. Because they did not come from God, their souls could not return to Him. And they could not enter hell either, because that place was not made for them. They became unclean spirits, wandering the earth, unable to pass on, belonging nowhere, but always seeking to enter the bodies of the living, to continue their presence in this world. That is what we call today demons. From one secret vow on Mount Hermon, a corrupted race was born. And from that race, an invisible army was unleashed. one that still moves among us to this very day. Heaven had waited long enough. The time had come for judgment. Part 4. When God responds, judgment without mercy. The Lord is slow to anger, but he does not look away. After the Watchers passed down forbidden knowledge, after the Nephilim ruled the earth in blood, after the ground itself was defiled from its roots, God was no longer silent. He sent the angel Uriel to a man named Enoch, the last righteous soul still in communion with heaven. And Enoch, in a terrifying vision, was shown the sentence given to the Watchers: bind them hand and foot, cast them into the darkness, into the depths of the abyss, and leave them there until the day of final judgment. No trial, no defense, no mercy. The Watchers, once powerful angels, were now imprisoned beneath the earth, in a place the Bible calls Tartaros, a pit deeper than hell itself. Did you notice? God did not destroy them. He imprisoned them to wait for a day already appointed, because their betrayal was too great to be judged in an instant. It required a day of reckoning, the final day of the world, for justice to be complete. But that wasn't the end. God also decided to wipe out the entire generation of the Nephilim through a terrifying event recorded in every major sacred text: the Great Flood. It was not an accident. It was not a random storm. It was a deliberate judgment with a clear objective: erase the corrupted bloodline, cut off the legacy of the fallen angels, and restore holiness to the earth. We often speak of God's mercy, but in this story, we must confront another side of him. God does not compromise with organized rebellion. He does not tolerate false light disguised as truth. He will not allow the sacred and the profane to coexist forever. Yet there's one haunting detail in the book of Enoch. Samyaza, the leader of the Watchers, begged for mercy. He pleaded with Enoch to bring his request before heaven. He promised to repent. And what was heaven's response? No word of theirs shall be forgiven. No mercy shall be shown. Let them witness the death of their own children, and then be bound in darkness forever. It sounds severe, but if you understand the holiness of God's design, you'll see why betrayal from within heaven is something that cannot be overlooked. And here is the key. The Watchers were not punished for desire. They were punished because they knew it was sin and still acted in full agreement. They were not weak. They were willful. They deliberately destroyed holiness, then taught mankind to do the same. Today, many people ask, if God is love, why would he punish so harshly? But they do not understand. Holiness cannot dwell with chaos, and true love demands justice. And so God closed a chapter, not out of rage, but to protect the rest of humanity with a chance for redemption. But he did not erase the memory. He left the story as a warning that no angel escapes the consequences of rebellion. And yet, one mystery still remains. Why were they punished immediately, while others still roam free? Part 5. Why were the Watchers punished more severely than other angels? If you've ever wondered, why is Satan, the leader of all rebellion, still roaming the earth like a roaring lion seeking whom he may devour? While the Watchers, just one group of angels, were imprisoned forever after their first offense, you're not alone. This question has puzzled scholars, pastors, and devoted believers for thousands of years. But if we look deeper into the nature of their rebellion, we'll find the reason why the Watchers were judged with unmatched severity. First, the Watchers sinned as appointed guardians. Unlike Lucifer, who was an angel of glory and music, the Watchers were sent by God to earth with a mission: to watch over humanity, to guide them toward righteousness. But instead, while holding the position of protectors, they became the ones who led mankind to destruction. It was betrayal from within, from the very ones trusted most. Imagine a soldier in war who turns traitor. An enemy from outside? We can resist. But a guard assigned to protect the city, who opens the gate for invaders himself, that is a deeper betrayal than any outside attack. The Watchers were that guard. Second, they didn't just sin, they created a system of sin. Lucifer fell through pride, a personal failure. But the Watchers planned their fall. They took oaths. They acted in total unity. They didn't just feel sin. They institutionalized it. They transferred dark knowledge into a structured curriculum for humanity, from sorcery to astrology, from warfare to seduction, from worship to superstition. This was organized corruption. And anything that is organized and stands in opposition to God is judged without mercy. Third, they broke the boundary between heaven and humanity. Yes, Lucifer led a third of the angels to follow him, but he didn't marry humans. He didn't create a hybrid race that defiled the entire creation order. The Watchers did. They took women as wives. They birthed the Nephilim, beings that twisted the image of God in mankind. They turned man in God's image into a hybrid creature, neither fully holy nor fully human. And this is the most terrifying part. The Watchers were the first fallen angels to tamper with human blood. They didn't just corrupt the human mind. They entered the flesh, altering DNA, lineage, physical form, something no angel had ever done before. This was a direct assault on God's holiest creation, humanity. Fourth, God acted swiftly to protect the rest of mankind. If he had not imprisoned the Watchers immediately, the earth would have become a breeding ground for Nephilim. No pure lineage would remain. No chance for the promised Messiah to be born. No fulfillment of the covenant with Adam, Abraham, or David. So God responded with urgency, not from hatred, but out of love, for those he had not yet given up on. And finally, the Watchers were imprisoned, but their story is not over. They are still there, bound in the deep, awaiting the final judgment. When the Son of Man comes with his holy angels, he will separate the sheep from the goats, and those who are bound will be cast into the lake of fire, where there is weeping and gnashing of teeth forever. The Watchers were punished immediately, because they were the first fracture in the wall between heaven and the corruption of earth. If God had not dealt with them at the root, there would be no humanity left to redeem. And now, let's come back to our world, because their legacy didn't stay buried in the past. Part 6, the dark legacy they left behind from the days of Noah to today. When the great flood receded, the Nephilim were gone. The Watchers were bound in the deep, and for a moment, the world seemed pure again. But it wasn't. The seeds of that rebellion were not erased. They simply changed form and kept spreading silently. Remember this: the angels were imprisoned, but the knowledge they left behind remained on the earth. Legacy 1: Fallen Knowledge. When the Watchers taught mankind how to forge weapons, cast spells, and manipulate metals, that knowledge did not drown in the flood. Look around the world today. Science and technology advancing beyond moral restraint. Sorcery, astrology, and enchantments glorified under new names like cosmic energy, spiritual healing, or manifestation. Children growing up no longer believing in the Bible, but memorizing witchcraft symbols spreading across social media. Does it sound familiar? These are echoes of what the Watchers sowed in the days of Enoch. And today, they are rising again, only now dressed as enlightenment or personal growth. Legacy 2: The ideology of human supremacy. Nephilim were hybrids, half angel, half human. After the flood, many scholars believe some bloodlines survived. They became kings, heroes, or lords in post-flood history. Consider the ancient civilizations. Egyptians worshipped pharaohs as children of the gods. Greeks told of demigods, heroes born of divine and mortal union. The Sumerians listed kings who ruled for 30,000 years or more. These are not random myths. They are distorted memories, remnants of the Nephilim line, turned into legends to glorify what should have been buried. Can you see the pattern? Today's world is repeating that same model. We exalt those with superhuman power, worship elite minds, follow awakened leaders, as if they alone can save the masses. This is the modern version of the Nephilim, resurrected in culture, in entertainment, in education, even in global systems of leadership. Legacy 3: Wandering Spirits. When the Nephilim died, their bodies perished, but their spirits did not return to God. Nor were they completely destroyed. They became disembodied spirits, what we now call demons. That's why the New Testament calls them unclean spirits. That's why Jesus had to cast them out of people. They often begged him not to send them into the abyss, because they knew it was the same prison where the Watchers were held. When the unclean spirit comes out of a man, it wanders through dry places seeking rest, but finds none. Matthew chapter 12, verse 43. They roam. They crave physical bodies because they don't belong fully in the invisible realm. They are hybrids, and now they influence human minds, emotions, and instincts through the doors we open: hatred, lust, pride, superstition, and knowledge without reverence for God. Do you think the danger is gone just because the Watchers are imprisoned? No. We are living inside their legacy. What drives the world today is not just people or systems, but ancient principles of darkness, sown thousands of years ago. From Noah's day until now, humanity keeps repeating the same pattern, elevating ourselves as gods, seeking power not meant for us, craving knowledge without moral limits. And that is reopening the same door that the Watchers first unlocked. It's no coincidence, Jesus said. As it was in the days of Noah, so it will be in the days of the Son of Man. Luke chapter 17, verse 26. Can you hear the echo? Once again, humanity is walking the same path. The watchers carved long ago. And if we do not wake up, we will face the same judgment. This is not just an ancient tale. It's a mirror held up to our present day. Part 7. Final warning when what's hidden will be revealed. You've just heard a story that spans from heaven to the abyss, from the world before the flood to the world we live in now. This is not mythology. This is not religious fiction. It's a sacred record, forgotten by many, but still unfolding in real time. 200 fallen angels, a covenant sealed in lust on Mount Hermon. The Nephilim, hybrid, violent, unholy, a judgment of fire from God, and a dark legacy still buried deep in our culture, our science, our education, even our religion today. You think it's all in the past? It's not. We are living in an age that echoes their rebellion. The world is reopening doors that God had once shut. Humanity is embracing the same knowledge, once sown by the Watchers. The ancient desire to become as gods is returning under new names: absolute freedom, cosmic energy, spiritual awakening, artificial intelligence replacing the divine. And the most frightening part? The old enemies are returning, but this time, they don't even need to hide, because this generation has stopped watching. We celebrate movie heroes with divine blood. We call witchcraft culture. We call immorality self-liberation. And we call demonic spirits ancient sources of power. But remember this: no knowledge is safe if it is not rooted in the fear of the Lord. Jesus said, "There is nothing hidden that will not be revealed, nothing concealed that will not be brought to light." The story of the Watchers is coming into the open again. The truth is being pulled from the shadows. And now, each of us must ask, whose side are you on? There is no neutrality, because this battle isn't outside of us. It's inside, in what you choose to believe, in whom you choose to follow, and in what you build your life upon. You are living in a time when every disguise will be stripped away, and when true light appears, every lie will be exposed. Get ready. That day is drawing near. If you've made it this far, it's not by accident. You've walked through a story that most people are too afraid to face. And now, it's time to choose. You can close this video and forget it all. Or you can pause, look around, and realize the spiritual war was never just in the Bible. It is happening right now in your life. If you want to keep searching for truth, follow the light, not the trends, not the crowd. And if this video series speaks to you, click subscribe so you won't miss what's coming next. Every share, every word could wake someone up, someone who's drifting in the dark. Remember this: truth always has a cost, but compromise will cost you far more. And in a world where darkness now wears the mask of light, walking in God's Word is the bravest thing you can do today. See you in the next video. May the light of the Lord be with you in a world growing darker by the day.